Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we are going to be doing an unboxing of the Arctic Freezer 3 280mm ARGB in white, as you can see here. Now this is one of those unboxings which is going to be, I'm just going to go straight through and show you what you get in the box and also some of my opinions. Now it's taken me a really long time to actually get hold of one of these, and people have been saying, oh, Freezer 3, yeah, it's a great AIO, etc, etc. And obviously we've seen benchmarks and it proves what it can do. But there are some downsides of this particular cooler which I am slightly concerned about, and mostly for my particular situation because I'm planning to put this into my daily driver, which is running an Intel 14700K in a Asus TUF Gaming motherboard, but the case is potentially going to be something which holds me back. Now with 280mm AIOs, the particular case I've got, which is the Series 330, it does fit them and I've used them in there previously. But what we do have with this particular model is the fact that the fans and also the radiator itself are a little bit thicker. So I am a little bit concerned that it physically won't fit in my machine. So the video is going to be broken down into two parts, one of which is going to be the unboxing, which is what we're doing now, and there will be a follow-up video where I attempt to actually install this in my computer and hope and pray that it doesn't interfere with my RAM, because my RAM was very expensive and I don't plan on changing it. So potentially I may have to return this and possibly go with the 360 version, or possibly even the 240, or just go back to one of my previous AIOs. So that is the kind of the background towards this. So let's go through and take a look at the cooler and see what it's all about. So we'll start off with the packaging. As you can see, it's pretty standard stuff from Arctic. A little bit better than what it used to be. It used to be just very plain cardboard boxes, but these are now nice retail packages. You can see what it is there. So Liquid Freezer 3 280 ARGB in white. There's a lot of sizes available of this, and also a lot of different variations in terms of colors. So there's the white version, obviously, which we have here. There's also a black version, and also there are non-RGB versions as well in both the black and the white. So it should be pretty much something for everybody. If you're not into RGB, no worries, you can get one. It'll be a little bit cheaper. If you are into RGB, pay a little bit more. And also in some instances, the white versions are a little bit more expensive than the black versions. But anyway, I'll put some links in the video description so you can check out the local pricing near you, and hopefully you can find yourself a deal. For us here in the UK, ordering from the actual Arctic site themselves is somewhat prohibitive because it is basically based in Germany. So you get the import taxes and also you get your VAT, and yeah, it's not great. So I would strongly suggest, if you're in the UK, possibly shop around a little bit, maybe look at Amazon. That's where I picked this one up for around about £88, which at the moment it's actually gone up another £2 to £90 because of the exchange rates. But you know, let's not get into that too much. Links are in the video description so you can check out for yourselves. So also, like I said, various sizes available. So you're looking 240s, 280s, 360s, 420s. So if you've got the room inside your case, 420 is obviously going to give you the maximum cooling potential. But for me, like I said, I've got some limitations with my case, so I've gone with the 280. Potentially might have to go with the 240, but we'll see what happens. Also included with this, you do get some Arctic MX6 for application, so you don't have to worry about buying any thermal paste because you get MX6, which is pretty decent. You also get mounting options for both AMD and also for Intel. Now when it comes to AMD, you've got pretty decent compatibility with both AM4 and AM5, and also there's an offset mount as well, so picking up on the hotspot areas of the AM5 platform. When it comes to Intel, things are a little bit more tricky. So this supports LGA 1700 and LGA 1851 straight out of the box, and it also does come with a mounting kit as well, which basically one of those kind of things which hold your CPU in place like a mounting bracket. If you want to use this on older platforms such as LGA 1200 or LGA 115X, not supported out of the box, but Arctic can provide you with a mounting adapter kit. Sometimes they'll provide that free of charge. Other times you have to pay a small fee for it, depending on where you're getting it from, etc., and also where you live. Other potential fitment issues that you may have is due to the size of the pump head on this. It's actually pretty big. Some motherboards do interfere with the primary M.2 slots. Arctic, in their generosity, have offered a replacement, so they will give you basically an M.2 cooler, which should be compatible because it's slightly smaller. Again, coming down to the individual locations and also pricing, etc., you may or may not be eligible for that. Something which I feel is pretty good and also shows that Arctic do have faith in their products is the fact we do have an included 6-year warranty. On the other side of the box, it mentions some of the ARGB compatibility. So this is going to be working great with pretty much any motherboard which has a 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB output. And also, something of interest for some people, if you don't like using motherboard software to control your RGBs, Arctic are actually in partnership with Signal RGB now, so this is 100% signal RGB compatible. On the back of the box, it's got some of the general specifications, so let's quickly go through there. So we've got socket compatibility, which you already mentioned, the thermal compound. Also, when it comes to connectors, there are two types of connectors included, which we'll take a look at very shortly. And the weight of this is actually pretty darn heavy, 1765 grams, so yeah, pretty chunky piece. So just make sure that your case is suitable for installing this. When it comes to the CPU block, because it's slightly different, it has a VRM fan built in from 400 to 2500 RPM, controlled by PWM. Also, the pump itself, spin speed between 800 and 2800 RPM, again, controlled by PWM. And you've got your cold plate dimensions there, etc. Moving on to the radiator fans. So the radiator fans use the rather nice Arctic P14 PWM ARGB fans. Obviously, in this instance, it's the white ones, but depending on which version you get, maybe black or the non-RGB. Size-wise, they're all going to be the same, so 140 by 140 by 27mm, which is a little bit thicker than the usual 25mm, so do take account of that. The fan speed of these, 200 to 1900 RPM, no 0 RPM mode on these, unfortunately, and they're using a fluid dynamic bearing and a 4-pin PWM connector. Something that's quite nice, these, the LEDs on the fans themselves, 12 LEDs built in, which is actually quite good. A lot of fans generally tend to be kind of some 4, 6, 8. So 12 RGB LEDs means that you're going to get a nicer flow situation if you're going for one of those kind of rainbow puke setups or some sort of color fade, of which obviously with signal RGB you can go absolutely nuts and create really, really intricate patterns. So having lots of RGB LEDs on there is very useful for that. Also, something which is possibly of interest to some of you and maybe a downside depending on your point of view, the actual tubing on these is actually a little bit longer than most normal ones. Normally you get tubing somewhere around about 400mm. This is 450mm. Some of that comes because the actual cabling is integrated, actually sheathed into the tubes. So for things like your ARGB and also your PWM, all of it is pre-wired inside the tube. So the tubes look a little bit thicker. That's because there is essentially like a liner around the outside of the tube and all the cables are passing through there. So in order to kind of fit most larger cases, they've given you about 50mm extra just so that those extra bends or what have you can be accommodated. Next, let's go through the accessories for mounting hardware, etc. So we'll start off with Intel. So for Intel, like we said, we get this mounting bracket. So these are on their own. Normally, if you buy one of these from sort of Thermalright or other companies, one of these will cost you around about £10 to £15, depending on what company and where you're buying it from. This makes the actual installation a lot easier and also removes the Intel loading mechanism, which can be a little bit problematic for some people. So this is actually really nice, and also there's some rubber on the back there to kind of isolate it from the board itself. Pretty nice thing to have included. It's actually somewhat of a shame as well, because some people would prefer just to use the standard stock stuff on the motherboard, so I kind of get it from both angles, but this should in theory make installation much better and also be a little bit better for the bending scenario which you've seen on some CPUs. In order to mount this, there's actually 4 screws included. Mine were broken in the bag, so I put them in another little baggie. You get 4 screws. Something I've heard about these as well is the screws themselves are a little bit on the short side, so potentially kind of getting them installed can be somewhat tricky, but we'll find out that when we do the installation in the follow-up video. And also to tighten those up and also to remove the Intel ILM, there is a little Torx key to allow the easy installation and removal. Next, we'll take a look at the AMD hardware, so a lot easier on that side of things. So you get 4 black spacers, 4 black screws, and also you get 2 brackets as well, which are clearly marked up left and right, so you can't put them in wrong. And also you make sure that you can actually see the LNR when you're installing it, and you don't install them upside down, which means it's a little bit more tricky to get them to install. And also the screw section there is a little bit raised, so that you don't have that thing where you just can't force your screws into the cooler, etc. So yeah, that's pretty nice that they've done that. And also you can see from there, there is a slight offset. So the actual hole where the screw is, look at it from that side, you can see there is a very small offset between the two. When it comes to universal hardware, so you get the thermal paste, so you get under a gram of MX6, which is absolutely fine, should be fine for at least 1, possibly 2 installations, should you want to kind of change things up a little bit. Other universal mounting hardware, we have a selection of screws. That's to attach the radiator to your PC case, and also there are some short fan screws as well. So if you decide to kind of switch things up a little bit and maybe reverse mount the radiator, you can do, but basically the screws that you need are there. The screws for actually attaching the fans to the radiator are already pre-done because it's pre-installed out of the factory. The interesting part as well, in terms of wiring, so you can either go for the simplistic approach. So if you want to, you can just plug this into the side of the pump head and you get one single connector, which will allow you to control the fans for both the PWM, the radiator, and also the pump speed, all done via PWM. So that's going to give you a little bit more flexibility in terms of if you've got an older motherboard that doesn't have an AIO header or doesn't have enough fan headers, so you can plug them all individually. So for sort of more basic motherboards, I think that is going to be absolutely fine. Or just if you don't want to faff around with setting all your individual speeds, use that cable. Alternatively, if you do want to take manual control of the VRM fan, the pump speed, and also the radiator fan speeds and that kind of stuff, then there is this optional three-way cable. So these are clearly marked up: pump, VRM, and fans. So yeah, pretty straightforward stuff. But both of them have the same multi-pin connector, which plugs into the side of the pump. So basically it's down to you, whichever you choose. If you want the simple option, go with the one. If you want more flexibility and more control, or more granular control, go with the 3-fan version. And so that takes us to the radiator itself. So it is a pretty chunky boy. One of the first things you'll notice when you take it out of the box is it does have a fair bit of weight to it. So if you do want to try and keep your PCs to the minimum of weight, this probably isn't the cooler for you. The radiator itself, 38mm, which is a little bit bigger than most. They tend to be somewhere around about sort of 30, maybe slightly less. And then you've got the fans again, rather than being 25mm, they're a little bit bigger, 27. Not a great deal, but potentially again, if you don't have a lot of clearance on your RAM, that might be problematic, as it might be in my instance. The fans, like I said, are pre-installed and pre-routed to take away all of that faffing around, which I think is actually excellent. I do like that a lot. Although on the flip side of that, it does also take away the flexibility. So say for instance, you like the unit itself and you like the setup, but you're not really keen on the fans and you want to swap them out, that is going to be a little bit more problematic. So you can swap out for different fans if you want to, but it does involve removing some of the wiring, which can be unclipped, but might be slightly unsightly. Most of it is actually hidden out of the way. So as you can see along this side, we've got the kind of pigtails or daisy chains there, which run along this side. Potentially, depending on how you're mounting the radiator, obviously if you're mounting it like this, those will be visible. So yeah, that's not entirely great, but not really a great deal you can do about it. Most people, I think, will probably opt to have those hidden and have this side showing, which is a lot cleaner. Taking a close look at that, so you can see where the cables run along and then go into here. Then they go into the tubes themselves. Not with the water, obviously, just alongside it. Runs all the way up into the pump head. And then you've got the connection inside there, which you connect up one of those 2 cables I showed earlier. And in terms of ARGB wiring, it couldn't be simpler. There is a single 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB header, which you just plug into your motherboard, and then that is going to supply your RGB to the pump, also to the fans, making life a lot easier. So yeah, I do like that. That is a very nice thing to have. And of course, if you're using the single pin version for the actual fan control, PWM, etc., VRM fan, you're basically going to have 2 cables for the whole lot, which I think does simplify wiring quite a bit. Also, when it comes to mounting, so because the actual pump head is removable, so that's just magnetically held on, so you can remove that, and that gives you access so you can see what's going on in here. So you've got the actual cold plate, you've got all the electrics there, and also you've got the kind of pogo pin connectors, so yeah, that's pretty good. You've got the screws for mounting it down. Also, when it comes to the tubes themselves, there is a little bit of movement on them. Not a huge amount, but there is a little bit of a swivel joint there. So if you do need to kind of move them out of the way a little bit, you certainly can do. So yeah, I like that a lot. And the fact that this section here is removable, I think that's actually quite a good idea, because there is actually a fan in there. So you may need to do periodic maintenance on there if you're in a somewhat dusty environment. So you could take this off, just unplug it, take this off, go and clean this somewhere, either with isopropyl alcohol or air dust or whatever. Clean that up, put it to one side, let it dry off. Then you can just go ahead and let it magnetize back into place, and yeah, that's pretty nice. You've probably seen some B-roll of this with it all illuminated. It does look pretty nice. The fact that they've put this kind of fan design on the top, which illuminates with RGB, is pretty cool. This section doesn't move at all. The fan itself is tucked down here a little bit lower. Again, that can be controlled independently if you want to. So if you don't need extra VRM cooling, you can just leave that either disconnected or just on a very low RPM. Choice effectively is going to be down to the individual. Going back to the fans, as previously, a lot of people have used these before. The P14s, great fans, really high static pressure, really nice blades, 5 blades on there. Also, the RGB lighting is fantastic. The only thing for me is the wiring situation. I think would be nice if maybe Arctic kind of got into the whole magnetic connections, so they're just like a magnetic connection or a single plug-in, an easier way of daisy chaining without having to have all the kind of the wires all tucked down in the side there. But I guess ultimately it's one of those things which helps keep down the price, of which this has been seen at some spectacular prices over the Christmas period and Black Fridays and that kind of stuff. More times than not with Arctic, there is going to be a big sale on at some point, so that is something to definitely look at if you're thinking of getting into this ecosystem and you want to pick up a Arctic Freezer 3. Just do check the prices and look at price history as well. If you go into Camel on Amazon, for example, you can see what previous prices have been. So if you look at it and the price seemed a little bit pricey for what you're expecting, look at the price history, see what it's been reduced to previously, then it might be worth kind of holding and waiting to pull the trigger until there is a sale on. So no, I think that pretty much covers everything. I'm actually quite excited to get this installed. I am very concerned that it physically won't fit inside my PC, but in order to find out, you'll have to tune in to the next video, which I strongly suggest you do. And also, obviously, if you do like this sort of content, and you want to see it in your inbox daily, then maybe consider hitting subscribe and the chime notification. That way you'll be notified of future video releases. But I think that's going to wrap this one up. I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.